Hello, today's assignment is going to be looking at the Bill of Rights, and I will be sending you in Google Classroom the links to the court cases that I'll be talking about today. Also, we'll give you the link to this YouTube video. You will need to get on Google Classroom, and your assignments will be linked there. All right, so just today's discussion is going to talk about Bill of Rights, specifically the First Amendment. I want to look at what's called Wisconsin versus Yoder. This is First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, petition. Wisconsin versus Yoder is a Supreme Court case from the 1970s. The Amish people, not near here, but somewhere else in the state of Wisconsin, they were taking their kids out of public schools at eighth grade, and they would give them a religious education and, working hard on the farm and all the things that they do, and uh, learning the trade and stuff like that. So it's not like they were just then becoming couch potatoes and not do anything. But the state of Wisconsin's like, well, we got to treat all the kids the same. You need to be in school, train for the future, get an education, get a high school diploma. And the time uh, in the 1970s, you had to be 16 to drop out of high school. Today, it is 18. That's been changed. But so the state was kind of holding its ground, not letting them withdraw from school. So they took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided under religion that the state of Wisconsin could not compel those kids to continue in the public school system. The Amish also didn't want their kids going to high school to be exposed to the general American culture. In the 1970s, they wanted their experiences to be based in the Amish community. So the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Yoder, and the state of Wisconsin was giving out monetary fines and potentially jail time if they for refusing to send their kids to school. So this is, I'll just summarize here. Several parents in Wisconsin who belong to a nonconformist conservative Amish religion were persecuted and convicted for violating a state statute. The statute known as the School Compulsory Attendance Law required that kids attend school until the age of 16. After the children left the eighth grade, their parents did not want them to attend the local high school and be part of the general society. They believed in a religious oriented society separate from the world and its customs. Their society centered around a life of farming and prohibited telephones, television, radios, or automobiles. So interesting for us. We are near to Amish community, uh, Fall Creek, Augusta, in that general direction, and I'm not really familiar with where they are in the whole state of Wisconsin, but we are a state that has Amish community, and I believe it's quite strong. So the Supreme Court ruling that the state cannot infringe upon the Amish and their um, right to practice their religion as they see fit. So it was everybody that was there on the Supreme Court that day voted in favor of Yoder and against the state of Wisconsin. So it's strong for the Supreme Court to send back to the state a ruling that's unanimous that you guys are wrong. You're infringing upon their religious rights. Um, yeah, leave them alone. So since the 1970s, the Amish have been free to take their kids out after eighth grade. All right. So the next one is Edwards versus South Carolina. I'll read it and then you decide whether it's speech, press, religion, assembly, petition. All right. So March 2nd, 1961, approximately 190 black high school and college students met at Zion Baptist Church in Columbia, South Carolina. From there, they walked in groups of about 15 to the South Carolina State House. Their purpose was to protest racial segregation and discrimination in South Carolina. When they arrived at the State House, they walked peacefully through the grounds for about 45 minutes. Some had placards protesting segregation. About 200 to 300 onlookers gathered to watch the protest. So now we're at about 500 people. The students were told that they would be arrested if they did not disperse or leave in 15 minutes. They then proceeded to sing songs, clap their hands, stomp their feet. After 15 minutes, all the protesters were arrested. They were subsequently prosecuted and found guilty of violating a statute that made it unlawful to breach the peace. So charged with disturbing the peace. All right, so we think about it. That case, what amendment do you think that falls under? Would it be speech? They're protesting, okay. Press, they're not really writing anything. Religion, well, they're coming from a church and they are a church group, but are they protesting anything with religion? Not really. Assembly, are they assembling in a group, have right to assemble? I would say yes. And then are they petitioning the government? Well, they're not exactly writing a letter, but they are stating their concerns to the government at the State House on Capitol grounds, that they're against segregation. They have the placards, the signs on a stick saying down, no more segregation and stuff like that. So then they're arrested. So this kind of falls under multiple parts of the First Amendment. So when it went to the Supreme Court reversed their convictions and ruled that the prosecutions and convictions violated their rights to free speech, free assembly, and the freedom to petition for redress of grievances. The court stated that it is clear to us, and this is 1962 if I didn't say that, it is clear to us in arresting, convicting, and punishing the petitioners under the circumstances disclosed by the record, South Carolina infringed upon the petitioners' constitutional protected rights of speech, assembly, and petition for the redress of their grievances. The circumstances in this case reflect an exercise of these basic constitutional rights in their most pristine and classic form. The petitioners felt aggrieved by the laws of South Carolina, which allegedly prohibited African Americans' privileges in the state. They peacefully assembled at the site of the state government and were peacefully expressing their grievances to the citizens of South Carolina, along with the legislative body of South Carolina. So these people that did that in the 1960s, we can thank them ourselves if we're ever going to protest anything, that we should be allowed to do that. All right, so online, I'll send these links in the Google Classroom, but on this site, Oyez, that if you go to Edwards versus South Carolina, it tells you who the petitioner is, and so it's Edwards versus South Carolina. Tells you when it happened, and then facts of the case, and question: did the arrest and convictions of the marchers violate their freedom of speech? So the cool thing about this, it will show you these people how they voted. 8-1 decision, pretty strong in favor of the defendants. Interesting thing is Mr. Clark here shows he dissented, and so to find out what his dissension was and not agreeing with the other justices. And then you can click under here for you guys that want to do extra stuff. And I've listened to these before, quite fascinating. You have a syllabus to look at, and then you can listen to the oral arguments, which are usually at least an hour, but I find it quite refreshing to listen to. So the other one is Wisconsin versus Yoder, and we got Wisconsin versus Yoder, and uh, the citation for the case against the Yoder and some other defendants. There were other people involved in that court case, and it states there who they are. All right, so then this is um, 7 justices voted, and these two um, were not present, Rehnquist and Powell, for whatever reason. So 7-0 to the state of Wisconsin. And that kind of tells you don't have a leg to stand on from the Supreme Court. And you need to think about these issues when you uh, give out citations that deal with freedom of religion versus a state. Um, you're not going to win too many cases if uh, usually if it's not causing a social disturbance or infringing on the rights of others. All right. So, and duly noted that Wisconsin now they changed the age that you have to attend school to 18. And if you're in high school and you've gone all the way to 18 and there's just a few more months of school left, why not finish it off? But when you're 18, you're considered an adult. All right, so I'm going to put this in Google Classroom. If you want to listen to these oral arguments from the case, I've listened to it. Pretty amazing. You got free time, why not? And maybe someday you'll be a lawyer. So I'll get this in Google Classroom, and we'll see you next week.